But shifting focus then, Soybean Processors Association of India has now requested the government to protect the interests of the Indian soybean industry amid ongoing India-US trade negotiations. The said association believes that if India reduces import duty on soybean, it could undermine India's domestic soybean production, which will be led by higher influx of low-cost imports. India, remember, is amongst the top 5 global producers of soybean, but India's average yield is much lower than the United States. To decode this, we now have Mr. D.N. Pathak, Executive Director of the Soybean Processors Association of India, now joining us. Mr. Pathak, thank you so much for taking your time out and joining us here on ET Now. And first things first, you have requested the government to protect the interests of the industry. Help us understand what really is the problem and what is the industry asking from the government.
I think soybean has become a flogging horse now for several months. The prices have been lower than the MSP, much lower than the MSP, and the farmers' expectation is not being met at all. And the expectation is not wrong. They at least expect the MSP. The other problem, NAFED bought soybean and then they started unloading it, which has further depressed the market and the prices have fallen further. On top of this, if there is a demand from the US, which I believe there is, and it leads to lower tariffs on soybean imports, or soybean oil imports, or soybean meal imports, then I think the whole industry will be in total jeopardy. The whole soybean sector is facing, I don't know what, I think it's facing a catastrophe. So that's our worry, and that's what we have requested the government to consider, because we cannot make our farmer compete with the US farmer when our productivity is one third, or at least a little more than one third of the US productivity. Our farmer just cannot compete with him. And it is not the fault of the farmer also. Our average holding is 1 hectare. The lowest holding in US is 5,000 hectares. So a 1 hectare farmer can certainly not compete with a 5,000 hectare farmer, whatever he does. In that sense, I think in agriculture, we have to be very, very cautious in what concessions are allowed. So concessions should be allowed looking at the Indian farmer's woes and his real problems. That is why we have requested the government that in the soybean sector, at least, the concessions, at least for the raw material, the soybean oil, meal, and soybean should not be allowed. Maybe there are some value-added products where we can do bilateral trade, or we can export something, they can import something from us. That's fine, but not for the basic raw materials.
Understood. We get that point, and I also believe that the industry is asking and requesting the government to request US to lower the countervailing duty which they charge. How much is it currently, and how much are you looking to reduce it by?
The US was importing about 1 million tons of soybean meal, organic soybean meal, from Indian companies. The duty is about 12 to 15%, depending on where it's coming from. 3 years back, US started some kind of investigation, USTR, Department of Trade, and then when they did not get some data with the way they wanted it, they levied 21 point, I think 23% countervailing duty on the major exporters, which are 12 to 13 exporters. Now the 3 years are off, and we have suggested to the government that please have this countervailing duty lifted, so that we can at least start exporting again the organic soybean meal, which we have in plenty. Our soybean meal is also non-GM. We are the best source. So that's one request which we made in this our representation. Yeah.
As a percentage of total exports that India does, how much do we export to the United States, and which are the other top exporting countries?
See, our total export has been 1.5 to 2 million tons in the last 3 years. This year also we expect 1.5 million tons. The organic soybean meal export is included in that. United States does not import any soybean meal from India except for organic meal, which is now, of course, totally off. The major exporting countries of soybean meal are Brazil, Argentina, and US. And the major importing countries, of course, the EU is there. There are a lot more countries which import soybean meal. But our export is limited to some few countries where they need, for food purposes, non-GM soybean meal, like Japan and Europe. This year, a lot of export has taken place to Europe. Iran was good export last year. This year, again, the export has not been that good for Iran. So this is the situation about import and export of soybean meal.
So that's as far as the export trade is concerned. But you spoke about India's average yield being lower as compared to several other countries, including the United States. What do you think can the government do in order to increase the average yield? Any steps or anything over the medium to long term which will probably help us?
My God. We have been discussing this yield because it is like that only for the last 3 decades. So there are books filled of proposals and whys and hows and how to do it. The need for action is there. It has been there for long now. I think the National Mission on Edible Oils has been launched. Money has been allocated. I am very hopeful that we will see some real action after this mission. And in fact, we had a good meeting last week with the Agriculture Ministry, and they have started this concept of value chain partners, where the industry or the private parties are also going to be involved. So I'm hoping that we will see soon some real action on increasing soybean yields. As to the reasons, there are many reasons. Some are in our control. The major reason for soybean productivity being low is the quality of our seed and the availability of seed. And then, of course, the pest management and disease management and practices. So these are the 4 major reasons which had to be. It's not a big thing to sort of dig them. The only thing is to take action. And as I said, I'm now hoping that the action will be taken positively, and we will see in the next 4 to 5 years the yields being raised by 30 to 40% at least.
Pathak, one last question. There are reports which suggest that China is trying to push soybean to India via Nepal, because of which there has been an exponential rise in imports into India. Are these reports true, and what are the implications of this?
See, we are not importing soybean this year at all. We normally import from Africa because under the LDC, the import comes as zero duty. Soybean coming from Nepal or any other country is not possible commercially because the duty is 45 plus 10, 49%. So these reports cannot be correct that we are importing soybean. If you're talking soybean oil, yes, some kind of oil, some soybean oil is coming under the SAFTA agreement, where the duty from Nepal is zero, and the duty in India on edible oil, refined oil, 35%. So there's a huge difference in that. And we have requested the government to plug this loophole. Some people are taking advantage of the rules of origin and bringing the oil as it is, which with this kind of huge difference in duty, it makes a good sense for these unscrupulous traders who work. I'm hoping that the government will take some action on that.
Mr. Pathak, thank you so much for taking your time out and joining us here on ET Now and helping us decode what the implications could be of soybean prices and export picture going forward. Thanks so much for joining us.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.